Just to let everybody know, this is a public meeting. Robin has just initiated the recording button, and so this will be recorded. Those of you who are committee members, you will obviously be allowed to vote on any motions that come before the committee here. Others that are in the public, you will not be able to. Further in the agenda, though, there is if we do have any members of the public who would like to comment, there is a period in the agenda for public comment after we get through with the primary business of the Route 28 commission or the advisory committee meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ted. I will be basically sharing the agenda and the slides as we progress through the presentation and through the meeting today. So hopefully if you don't have any papers in front of you, this will help you sort of follow along with the meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ted.
Okay, well, thanks, Brent, and welcome everybody to the Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board meeting. Boy, that's a mouthful. We're doing it WebEx, and the most important thing today is to keep your phone on mute if you're not speaking, because that'll make the meeting go a lot better. The first thing we have to do is a roll call, and I previously emailed you all of the attendees at the meeting today, the committee members, Fairfax, Loudon, VDOT, and Shirley staff. They're all on the call, but the committee members need to sort of formally announce they're here, and we'll go just as they're listed in the document that I send you. I'm the first member, Mary Beth second, Jeff, Mike, so on. So just for the record, I'm Ted Lewis, and I am here. Mary Beth?
Mary Beth Avadesian is here.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Fairfield is here.
Mike Huber here.
Bill McCabe is here. Pete McCabe is here.
All right. And I think we got Bill Keach in there too, right? Yeah, all right. Go
Correct.
ahead, Leo? Leo? Oh, we may have lost Leo. Let's move on to Craig and see if we can pick up Leo at the end.
Craig Pritchett, Tar Lumber is
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Leo?
Yep, I'm here. I guess I have to raise my hand every time I need to speak. So, yeah, I'm here.
I'll watch for you.
Thanks.
And has Scott made it into the meeting yet? I don't think Scott's here yet. And then finally, Matthew.
Hi, Matt Schultes is here.
All right, thanks, Matt. As you guys will see from the roll call, we have 11 individuals on our committee right now, and that's because Bill Matarazzo is no longer employed at COPT. He was a Fairfax County Board of Supervisors nominee. So my understanding, he's going to be replaced by Vanessa Kennedy of COPT, but the Board of Supervisors has to formally approve that, and they were not able to get that done before the meeting. So Vanessa is attending today, but she's attending as a member of the public and technically can't vote on any of the measures today, but we hope she'll be a member as soon as the board approves it. So the first part of the meeting is I have a number of motions that need to be made, and then unfortunately we have to do a manual roll call on each motion, and we'll just go through the same list. So I'll try to get through them quickly. Here's the first one. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board. I'll make the motion. Need a second.
Second,
That's Mary Beth, seconded.
Mary Beth.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, actually, yeah, we got to do it by.
Gotta go down.
Sorry. I wish we could do it that way. All right. So I'll start. I'm in favor of it. Mary Beth?
Mary Beth votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Mike Huber votes aye.
Bill Keach votes aye.
Yeah.
Pete McCabe votes aye. Jim
Craig
Pollock.
Ritchie votes aye.
I think Leo, I think you got stepped on there. Was that you?
Yeah, if it works better, if you can just leave me unmuted, I'll use my mute button to go on and off when I need to speak. That might work better, but I vote aye.
Okay, perfect. And then I think we had Craig,
Craig Ritchie votes aye.
then Jim.
Jim Pollock, aye.
Schultes votes aye.
Okay, Scott's not here. Okay, that's the first one. I think we have 2 more to go. The next motion, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures which require the physical assembly of this Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board and the physical presence of the public cannot be implemented safely or practically. So I'll make that motion and need a second.
I'll second. Jeff Fairfield will second the motion.
Okay. And then this is Ted Lewis. I'll vote aye for that.
Mary Beth Avadesian votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Michael Huber votes aye.
Bill Keach votes aye.
Pete McCabe votes aye.
Leo Titus votes aye.
Craig Ritchie votes aye.
Jim Pollock votes aye.
Matt Schultes votes aye.
All right. We're rolling now. Okay, the next one. I further move that this Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-877-336-1829. It is so moved. Need a second for that?
Second, Bill Keach.
Okay. And then for the voting, Ted Lewis votes aye.
Mary Beth Avadesian votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Michael Huber votes aye.
Bill Keach votes aye.
Pete McCabe votes aye.
Leo Titus votes aye.
Craig Ritchie votes aye.
Jim Pollock votes aye.
Matt Schultes votes aye.
Okay. Okay, we're rolling. Next one. All matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County and Loudoun County government, and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this Route 28 Highway Transportation Improvement District Landowners Advisory Board, lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved. I'm looking for a second.
Second, Bill Keach.
All right. All right. And this Ted Lewis, I vote aye.
Mary Beth Avadesian votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Michael Huber votes aye.
Keach votes aye.
Pete McCabe votes aye.
Leo Titus votes aye.
Craig Ritchie votes aye.
Jim Pollock votes aye.
Matt Schultes votes aye.
Okay, I think that is it for the motions at the beginning here. So we're like a smooth machine now. So for the next part of the agenda, we'll turn it over to Joe to talk about the financials statements.
Got you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe LaHate with Fairfax County. Good morning, everybody. A standard review process that we provide you every year. The report that you see here is the audit conducted by Jerry Beckert at the request of Fairfax and Loudoun counties. Standard and in the similar fashion every year. The most important takeaway is it's come back with a clean audit, everything in full conformance with accounting principles, and we move forward into the next year. So I don't typically spend a whole lot on this other than we've asked for a clean audit and we got that. A testament to the records kept by all staffs in coordination with the accountants as well.
All right, Joe, I think you can just move right into
That's
item
okay.
4.
Okay, gotcha. And Mr. Chairman and members, you'll see this is standard memos that are transmitted on an annual basis. The first one from Fairfax County reflecting our approximate $6.4 billion in land value for the tax district as far as the updated values for January 1, 2021. That would make it, effective for FY22. And then on the next page, a little bit more. Yeah, the corresponding memo from Loudoun County noting $7.6 billion in assessed value for the district on the Loudoun side. And that pretty much covers that. And we'll move right into the actual presentation itself, which I think just a little
Yeah,
bit.
the VDOT presentation is actually next on the agenda. But we can do yours instead if you want.
Okay. If I defer to Mr. Chairman, if that's okay, sorry. Normally use that same process every year, pardon.
Right. Well, let's, actually, I
Your
think
call,
I
Mr.
already
Chairman.
forgot one thing on the agenda, the proof of notice and advertisement. Let me get to that first so that we don't forget that, because that's a critical part. Is that something you do, Brent, or?
That's something that Susan Glass and I both do. So yes, just verbally confirming that the notice was put on the county's website, on the county's calendar, per regulations.
And
I don't know if Susan can,
maybe Susan or Kelly.
or Kelly, yeah. I can tell you, she sent me notification that they posted their webpage, so, and their calendar.
I'm not sure if Susan's still having audio issues, but yes, we have posted it on our website and sent over proof of notice to Fairfax County.
All right. Okay, and maybe just since it'd be hard to switch what is being presented right now, we go to the VDOT presentation, and then Joe, you'll pick back up. We'll try something different this year.
Gotcha.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Susan Shaw with VDOT. So, you know, we've completed the last remaining scope in the tax district in our comprehensive agreement. So we completed the Area 5 in June of 2020, and then we just completed the Area 4 in December. And so all of that work is complete. We are still doing some final, you know, financial close items out of that last segment. And on the second page, just the financial update, a total of $109 million roughly was provided for the widening segments along Route 28, which is what we've been working on the last few years. And that's been a combination of tax district, transportation partnership opportunity fund, and Northern Virginia Transportation Authority funds. We have billed everything except for that last project, the Area 4 project, to the tax district. We are anticipating that we'll need a little bit less than what we had, you know, had been approved by the tax districts. About $2 million will not be billed. And you can just see that final summary on that last page, which shows that one line item, about $17.5 million, we have not yet billed, but we'll be doing that as we wrap up and make sure that we have all the outstanding payments and everything covered. So that's where we stand. So we're done.
Always good to report that, Susan.
Yeah, and I don't know if Jeff, Austin, or anybody from the Shirley Dewberry team wanted to comment or add anything.
Susan, this is John Harmon. Yeah, we are done. It's been an 18-year ride. It's been, I think, a positive, definitely for Route 28. So sorry to see it end, and it's been a pleasure working with everybody.
Well, normally we'd have a big party to celebrate, but that COVID screwed everything up, John. So we'll have to wait. Maybe with that $2 million we have left over, we can figure out something. So great job though, Shirley and VDOT. I mean, it's been really helpful, the Route 28. So I guess now if we can just go back to Joe for item number 4 for his presentation.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just moving on through here onto the second page of the presentation. Again, highlighting what I had referenced before in terms of where the land values are this year versus last year. You can see we're down about 4.5% on the Fairfax side, which is actually consistent with overall trends in commercial values in Fairfax, which are down about just a little over 4%. The Loudoun values you'll see here did have a reset at the end of the prior calendar year based on some updated assessed values that were appealed to the Loudoun board. So they are at 7.6 billion for 1/1/20 revised, and then a slight bump in 1/1/21 to 7.644 billion. Overall, we're down about 1.8%, which I think probably at this time last year, we probably had no idea where things were going to be going. We were just on the cusp of trying to get a grasp for COVID and how it would impact things. So suffice it to say, we're still at $14 billion, which is still pretty respectable, but not totally sure if we're fully in the clear yet or not. Next slide. You know, we've showed this chart in the past to always kind of give a reminder of where things have been historically assessed value-wise and give you the context in terms of where we are right now. We had a pretty good run there of going straight positive value change year over year from 2012 to 2021. Obviously, we're not there this year, but I think we made it out a little bit better, you know, compared to where we could have been, as I noted before. You had the big booms in 2009 and 2010. We've had some consistent growth in the last several years. The value we reached last year was, you know, an all-time high and the largest percent growth that we had in, you know, since 2009. So things are still stable. You can see, you know, the 10-year and 5-year respectively are about 3.7 and 4.1%. So still pretty decent. And you know, last year we did decrease that tax rate by 1 penny. Next slide. This is the corresponding revenue spinoff of those assessed values times the tax rate. You know, a penny is roughly $1.4 million for the current projected fiscal year. Based on the adjustments we had in 2021, that's why you're going to see that revenue flat. We have seen some initial tweaks in terms of collections, just down slightly based on some trends. So we have made some holdbacks or some discounts on that collection internally. So that's the reason you're going to see it down a couple percent points from 21 to 22. But just for the context here, when we talk about overall collection rates in both Fairfax and Loudoun County, you're at probably 99% pretty close to 100%. So if we're dialing back collection rates here, just to be conservative, given where we are right now, we're only coming down maybe less, than 1% or 2%. So suffice it to say, we're still in pretty good shape. We're just trying to be cognizant of current trends that we see as far as collections when we review the numbers prior to this meeting and throughout the remainder of the fiscal year as well too. On next slide, slide 5. Again, a standard debt profile here, just to understand, this is all fixed debt service payments. There's nothing that's going to reset in any form of derivative whatsoever. And you can see this gives the projected plan out through 2037, the final year of debt service in the district. Once that last year of debt service is paid off, the tax district goes away. Over the course of the next couple of years, roughly at about $18.34 million in debt service per year. That's what we're trying to meet. Two things that I wanted to highlight here that I think are good here is as we move into roughly this time next year in 2022, the two pieces you'll see there become callable. The CTB, the state debt, the Series 2012, and the EDA deals, the Series 2012. Both of those, we're actually going to recommend moving forward from both counties' financial staff to pursue a refi opportunity of the EDA Series 2012 and see what we can do working with the VDOT financial staff as well on the CTB Series 2012. We believe that presents a really good opportunity to lower that debt service payment annually. It's the EDA is the green piece, and the CTB is kind of the lightly shaded piece of debt that falls in between the blue EDA 2016 and the green EDA Series 2012. So again, any opportunities that we have, as we did last in 2016 when we do a refi, does not extend that final maturity. So as we show you here today, the debt would be paid off in 2037. and we move forward with the refi opportunity, we're simply just knocking savings off the top and still ending in 2037. We're not doing this to extend this further out and prolong the tax rate. So again, something that we think, given the timing of where things stand and where will values go next year, we see this as a great opportunity to really reduce that denominator or debt service as we move forward. Next slide. So debt service coverage, it's that main metric we show you every year, essentially tax district revenue divided by debt service. The larger the margin, meaning revenue is above debt, the greater the coverage and the spread. A simple break even of 1.0 times would mean you had just enough revenue to the penny to pay debt service. So we're looking for a little bit of a margin, buffer above that. And again, you can see when we had big bumps in assessed values, i.e. back in the mid 2000s, we had strong coverage. And also that led to the ability to reduce the tax rate at the same time too. As we move forward, we've maintained roughly in the 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 times, which was comfortable and adequate. Obviously from a financial perspective, we'd probably prefer to have it a little bit higher, but we've met our needs, made our debt payments. And obviously, as we discussed last year at these board meetings, we did reduce the tax rate by 1 cent from 18 to 17, the first change that we had done since March 2009. But again, we were in pretty good shape. We had met some calculations and coverage requirements, and we felt it was prudent at that time to do that. To state the obvious, given where we are this year, we are recommending keeping the tax rate at 17 cents.
So Joe, if those refinancings do come in in the following year, then this ratio would go up, right? The line would go up.
Exactly. It looks stronger, Ted. Exactly. Once you lower that denominator debt service, and hopefully we can get some positive incremental growth on the revenue side, that would make these coverage numbers even better. And I think that's part of the story we'd obviously, like to show to the rating agencies to prove where this credit, where this tax district can stand as we move forward. But yep, probably the number one indicator.
Can I ask you a quick question? If these bonds are callable in April 1st of 2022 and you're going to refinance them, should we plan on an interim meeting between now and then so that we can vote on that? Or is that going to be something that you're going to have as part of today's agenda?
Yeah, I think, Mary Beth, our plan would be to come back to, I think, everybody in the fall. I think we'd like to use the spring and the summer to put together a timeline and roughly to obviously do this. We've got a draft resolution for the commission since they need to vote on that. We'd obviously ask for your all's vote and concurrence to move forward on this too. If I had to, as we talk this out from both the Fairfax and Loudoun side, we'd probably come back to everybody in the fall. And that would also include the sign off from both respective boards of supervisors as well too. And then try to get in the market at that time. So ideally, by the time we meet with you all next year, we've already locked in and closed and have final numbers show you, and ultimately a reset series of lower debt service numbers. Not going to.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. And slide 7. Yep. There we go. Thank you. So we've showed you coverage going back, and now we just want to at least try to give a perspective of where could coverage look like going forward. So, I think you all know that we typically set up 2 guardrails here. On the bottom, the dotted red is kind of a minimum, an additional bonds test, meaning if we wanted to sell bonds to do another project, which thankfully we don't have to, because as John and Susan just alluded to, they're all done. We need to make sure we could meet 1.1 times or dotted red. And by comparison, that's the minimum you've got to meet floor. By comparison, a ceiling, we reference 2007 there in the dotted green. So just to give you 2 perspectives of how low could you go versus how high have we been. We would probably fall somewhere in between as far as projected growth. And, we've always done this. We've used a conservative 1.5, sort of the tan figure there. And we've also used the 3% of the dark blue. Just to give context, obviously, where are we this year? We're basically just a little bit above, 0.6. So to go too far, we don't ever want to be too aggressive with these assumptions, but we just want to kind of see going forward, where could the coverage be? And again, we've kept it at 17 cents. We're not trying to raise the tax rate to make this artificially higher to meet a figure, and we're just trying to be conservative. And you see the bump from 27 to 28 is based on the fact that debt service declines for a 4 or 5 year period there. So once you've got that lower debt service number, obviously your coverage automatically will just click up proportionately there too. So in line, like I said, we probably want something at least in a 1.2, 1.25 times, if not a little bit higher. And we're slowly on our way to get there. at either a 1.5 or 3% growth scenario here that you see. Okay, next slide. You know, we had this question last year because there were a few new board members, and I just wanted to provide some context that, you know, if anything we've seen this year, there's been a little bit of turbulence in the assessed values for this district on the commercial side. So the obvious question is, okay, you know, we have tax rates, we have assessed value, and that generates your revenues. But it should also be known that there are other funds and reserves that back this district up, that ultimately give it a one-off notch from AAA. And these three main pieces essentially back that up. The project completion fund, which has proven to be an enormous versatile source of funding for this district. We've been able to cash fund projects. We've been able to fund design and advance of construction. And the short answer being not having to go out and issue any new debt because we've had ample money in the PCF to help out. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the following slide, but we've also got two additional reserves that we have set up as well too. Call that bondholder security. The next one you see here is a revenue stabilization fund, essentially funded at 1 year of debt service. That is fully good to go, and that's been funded, you know, since we've started issuing debt years ago. And then lastly, we have a debt service reserve fund, which is tapped through a combination of cash fund and a surety policy, which you don't see too much anymore these days. But suffice it to say, those essentially kind of translate to roughly 2 years of debt service. And to date, we have not accessed either of them, but they are there, and they are in large part the reason why it adds a little bit more of a backstop to make this credit as financially stable and well-rated as it is. And ultimately, if either of those two funds reserves are not needed, they would pay off debt service down the road, hypothetically 2036 and 2037. But again, just wanted to show everyone that we've got ample backup in place there too. Thank you. And on the next slide. Thanks. So again, as I just alluded to, you know, the PCF really has been an incredible source for us in terms of all that it's provided. So I just wanted to give some context in terms of the total value, less some deducts, and then ultimately what's net, you know, undesignated available, you know, to this district and for potential use. So all in gross, we've got about $29 million as it stood at the end of January. And we had been holding an estimate for area 4 of 18.9 million. And Susan, if I take you correctly, that's actually about 17.5 now. So we've actually got a little bit more available in here. And then line item C, we project to add roughly an additional $5.7 million in the current fiscal year right now, meaning all our tax revenues, less our debt services. The net margin that will result from that is about an excess of $5.7 million. And then line item D ultimately translates to how much money do we think we'd have at the end of the fiscal year? Roughly about $16 million, the net of those pieces above. And then line item E is a policy that we've asked you all to consider on an annual basis, essentially saying, could we hold a little more in reserve of this PCF? And we've asked you to consider, could it be roughly half of the maximum annual debt service payment that's outstanding on the district, or roughly $9.4 million. So that would be an additional form of essentially bondholder security that we would use in reference to the rating agencies to say that we've got a project completion fund, we've got a revenue stabilization fund, we've got a debt service reserve fund, and we also hold essentially, you know, half of the PCF, our potential debt service needs too. It's a best practice, and we're just trying to prove to people, the rating agencies obviously, that we've got backstops and we've got funding set aside here. So all in, if you were looking at line item F there, what would truly be available as of the end of FY21 as we project, it'd be about $6.6 million. And then as we try to forecast what FY22 will do, we would generate, you know, revenues, less debt service, and spin off an additional roughly $5 million. So meaning at a little more than this time next year, we would have approximately $11.5 million available, undesignated, to be used. And again, we are not essentially saying, leave that money here, let it do nothing. We'd actually ask to use that money in context of the refinancing that we're talking about doing later this fall and to close on in the spring. We feel it'd be a great opportunity to essentially use as part of that deal as an additional equity contribution, another source of funds to go after that refi deal, since we're not trying to hold any extra money here for no purpose, since it really has no use. If there's extra money that's generated, we simply just want to use it to pay off the outstanding debt, since that, as you all know, leads to lower debt service payments on an annual basis.
And there, just to be clear, Joe, there is no more projects to be spend any money on. So there is no, that's what you're saying. There's no use for that money right now.
Exactly. We're at a point right now, I think it's as John and Susan just noted that, all the projects are accounted for, locked in for their equivalent debt service or paid for in cash as an Area 4. Right now, I think what we would probably do is come back to you all this time next year as well with maybe some financial metrics to keep in mind of, how much money do we want to leave in the PCF, or if there is extra money in the PCF, could we consider, potentially an annual sweep of certain amounts and just further get into a notion of debt payoff. Ultimately just translates to trying to find a way of what can we control going forward. We can't necessarily control the economy or assess values, but if we got an ability to lower that debt service from refinancings or take extra cash and pay off that debt in advance, it just furthers the ability to give more flexibility and bring that denominator down, which is really what we want to go after.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, slide 10 essentially just kind of summarizes the staff recommendations that I've pretty much, I think, alluded to right now. Given that growth was fairly flat and we had some, maybe a little bit more unknowns, we do not recommend, any further changes in the tax rate. Keep it at 17 cents. In the project completion fund, still hold that $9.4 million or half of maximum debt service. Keep that 18.9 to pay the pending invoices from Area 4 from Clark and VDOT, which again, if it's not 18.9, it's 17.5. So we would generate a little bit extra cash there. If we've got extra cash in the PCF, pay off the debt. And then with your blessing, we'd like to move forward and kind of mobilize to get a timeline to go after the refi on those Series 2012 EDA bonds to go after debt service savings. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions.
Any questions from advisory members?
I had one quick question. Since Area 4 is coming in 1.4 million, approximately 1.4 million less, and that's exactly what a penny decrease amounts to. If it was reduced to 16, you'd still end up with the 9.439 that you're talking about. And I understand paying down debt is a great thing. I'm just wondering at what point, and maybe you want to wait till after the refi to do the decrease. I just want to make sure, obviously you all have looked at this, but you're recommending we wait to do the decrease until after the refi instead of potentially doing it now.
Yeah, Craig, I fully agree. I think if we can buy one more year to at least see where the market goes in terms of the values, lock in that savings, put the extra cash towards it. I really think we've got a good story to tell moving forward. And I really do believe the only plan going forward really is just to manage that tax rate and to make sure we hit the proper metrics going forward to adhere to those bond ratings, which have really helped us tremendously in the market to get those refis. But I do believe in 2023 going forward, we'll have lower debt and that'll give us more flexibility to talk options. And maybe put a financial policy together to say, if we want to hit a certain coverage and we can maintain it, if there's an ability to lower the tax rate without going below that coverage, I think that's something we want to consider. But we're right there with you. We're just asking for really another year to kind of buy some time to just lock in some of that savings ideally.
Okay.
Okay, at this point, are there any other questions for Joe? So no other questions. I think at this point we'll vote on the recommendations, and I'll just go through. I'll just repeat them again. Voting on whether to maintain the tax rate at 17 cents per $100 of assessed values, to maintain a minimum balance in the project completion fund at or above 50% of the maximum annual debt service, about 9.4. Maintain the PCF set aside for Area 4 widening at 18.9 max, I guess, million. And then explore opportunities to use the excess balances in the PCF to reduce the debt burden, and then to mobilize to pursue refinancing of 59 million of callable EDA bonds Series 2012 for savings if favorable market conditions. So I'll set that as a motion.
Second, Bill Keach.
Second, Bill Keach. Okay, and then actually we got to do the roll call again. So I'll start, and Ted Lewis says aye.
Davidson votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Michael Huber votes aye.
Bill Keach votes aye. Pete McCabe votes aye.
Leo Titus votes aye.
Craig Ritchie votes aye.
Jim Polacaro votes aye.
Matt Schultes votes aye.
Okay, I think we've got a, what is that, 10-0, with one person not here. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public comment period, and it says 2 minutes per speaker. Do we have any speakers from the public today? Give it my 8-second pause. Hearing none, we'll close the public comment period. The next item on the agenda is election of officers. I'm your chairman. Bill Keach is the vice chairman. We haven't done much politicking for these roles, but I'm certainly willing to stay on in my role. I won't speak for Bill, but I assume he is.
I am.
So
I move that Ted Lewis and Bill Keach be reelected respectively as chair and vice chair of the advisory board. This is Jeff Fairfield. I think anybody who can get through a virtual meeting as well as Ted did deserves reelection. And Bill was quick on the dime to second all motions. So that's my rationale for my motion.
I'll second that. This is Craig.
Okay, and then we will do a roll call again, vote. And this is Ted Lewis. I vote aye.
Mary Beth Avadesian votes aye.
Jeff Fairfield votes aye.
Michael Huber, enthusiastic aye.
Bill Keach, aye. Pete McCabe, aye.
Leo Titus aye.
Craig Ritchie, aye.
Jim Polacaro, aye.
Matt Schultes, aye.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a couple of presentations. The first presentation is on the Route 28 and Dulles Toll Roads study. And I believe that's being given by Abraham Lerner and Susan Shaw.
Susan, do you want to kick it off or do you want me to start?
No, I think, Abby, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So we have been working on an assessment of traffic conditions and safety, traffic operation and safety for the Route 28 and Dulles Toll Road and Dulles Greenway interchange area. If we could go to the next slide. Okay. So the purpose of the study is to identify mitigation measures that can improve traffic operations and safety in that area of the Route 28, Route 267 interchange. We have and will continue, and we will analyze. We have analyzed roadway conditions, evolving land developments, and traffic growth associated with those land developments. One of the main goals of the study was to identify or develop a master plan to program future project efforts in this area. And we do know that some of the improvements can be implemented on a short-term basis. So we are developing a list and a summary of those short-term improvements based on the master plan. So the master plan is showing what can be improved in the short term and the long term. If we could go to the next slide. So the project study area is encompasses Route 28 from Frying Pan Road to Sterling Boulevard, and Route 267 from the Greenway Toll Plaza to Centerville Road. We started looking at the study area being very focused, but just the interchange area. But we realized that for this to be a meaningful study, it needed to include the adjacent interchanges. Therefore, we extended to Sterling Boulevard, Frying Pan Road, and Centerville Road. So this area has several jurisdictions that are within its limits, Fairfax County and Loudoun County. So we, for purposes of conducting the study, we partner with Fairfax County and Loudoun County, as well as the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority and TRIP, to the operators of the Dulles Greenway. These partners contributed finances to conduct the study. They are all these partners are very much have been working with us as technical advisors and participating in the project endeavors. And the town of Herndon, even though was not a funding participant, the town of Herndon did help in all the technical assessments that we conducted for the study. So this graphic is shows all the improvements that we have are recommending as part of the final recommendations of the study. It includes the short and mid and the long-term improvements. I guess I want to point out that that there are a number of improvements in this area that are being planned and are included in the constrained long-range plan, as well as some development proposed enhancements. And those are the ones that are shown in blue. In terms of sort of the overall picture of improvements, and we later this week we're gonna have on our website the draft final report posted in our project website, so you can you'll be able to see in much more detail as we have screenshots or more detailed pictures that show the improvements at each of these locations. But in general terms, the improvements include significant changes on Route 28, a lot of sort of grade separations in the area immediately adjacent to the 267 and Route 28 interchange. There are some closely spaced interchanges. So in order to avoid the operational and safety issues associated with those closely spaced interchanges, then we are proposing to have some flyovers and some braided ramps to eliminate those weaving conflicts. So as you start sort of heading up in our study area, you see some braided right. We are proposing, or we're recommending, the construction of some braided ramps prior to arriving to the Innovation interchange if you're heading north on 28. We are also making some recommendations to modify the interchange at Route 606. There are a few recommendations related to policy changes in terms of how the tolls are being would be structured on the Greenway as well as the Dollar Store Road. There are new roadway connections. You see from 606 down south, there is a new connector that ties into Innovation. So that's being proposed as a recommendation of this study. We're also making recommendations for changes to the toll plaza. So with the Dollar Store Road, the recommendation is to change to the collection method and operate those as electronic toll collection, and not the way they operated in the past, and MWA is indeed already moving forward to implement that recommendation. And there are modifications to the interchange at Centerville Road. That one is being proposed kind of on a longer term. We can go to the next slide. So in order to develop a prioritization plan of the improvements that we recommend for, in conjunction with our study, we focus on sort of the most urgent safety and congestion needs to establish what needs to be done earlier in the process. And so we have the Route 28 southbound to the Dulles Toll eastbound movement as one that we identified as operational safety issues. The Route 28 southbound weaving and the Dulles Toll Road eastbound congestion as sort of key elements that need to be addressed on a short-term basis or as early as possible. We also have developed, in order to develop the prioritization scheme, we looked at what are some of the low-hanging fruits. So even if they're not that critical from the perspective of traffic operation safety, can they be implemented with sort of low capital expenditures? So we put in those as short-term, even if they were not sort of high priority for operations and safety. We also took into consideration what are some of the, what is the timing of nearby program improvements, and then how do our proposed improvements work with those program improvements. So we develop a list and a map of short, midterm, and long-term projects. If we could go to the next slide. So in red, we have the projects that we are proposing to be near term. In green is the midterm, and in brown is the long term. So in terms of the near term, the blue box relates to the changes in tolling structure. And so we think that that can be implemented in the short term. And what we have is the changes to the approaches to the Dulles Toll Road and to the Dulles to Route 267 interchange as you head southbound on Route 28. So that movement where the Greenway comes into Route 28, Greenway eastbound enters Route 28, and then there is an interchange at Route 267. The proximity of those two create an operational safety issue. So we are proposing in the short term the introduction of some a flyover to separate the movement and eliminate the southbound Route 28 to eastbound Dulles Toll Road ramp. And that movement would be conducted via a flyover. There are also other improvements, such as the modifications to the interchange at Route 606 and that parallel street to Route 28 that connects to Innovation. So those are some of the projects that we are proposing in the near term. You can see that our estimate is that the construction of those near-term improvements would be approximately $247 million. The midterm improvements would be approximately $80 million, and The long term, as I mentioned before, would be the modifications at the Center River Road interchange. That would be approximately $73 million. That's a total of $400 million. At this time, there is no identified funding for the implementation of these improvements. That is sort of the next step in the process. If we could go to the next slide.
Hey, Abraham, before you go to that next slide, there were a
Sure.
couple of roads that are shown in blue that I believe say that they're developer plan that go through the quarry to the east of 28 there. Are those already committed, or what's the timing on those?
It's a combination of developer already proffer improvements as well as improvements that are already included in the CLRP. So it's either a commitment from the jurisdiction or a commitment from the developers. The ones that are commitments from the developers are already included in proffers. The ones that are in the CLRP, there is an implicit commitment on the part of the jurisdiction that they will be constructed.
Okay.
Avi, this is Jim Pollock here. Also, one question was westbound on the toll road to northbound on 28. Was that not identified as a capacity issue, an operational issue?
Yes,
to me,
yes.
Equally is critical.
Westbound on 267 to northbound. Yes, it is identified as a capacity, and there are midterm improvements proposed there with the widening of that northbound piece of Route 28. That's going to buy us some time before those need to be implemented. But there are a number of issues that need to be addressed with respect to that merge from that ramp onto northbound 28 and the proximity of innovations being so close to the 267 interchange. So right. Yes, it is. But we looking at the modeling data, we established that could be delayed, and we could place these improvements in the midterm bucket rather than the short-term bucket.
Okay, I understand the proximity to innovation, but it seems from a capacity point of view that, especially during peak hours, that movement is very difficult.
Yes, no, we have identified these as issues and operation from the operation and safety perspective. We were trying to be conscientious about establishing a set of priorities, and we just put it in the midterm bucket.
This is Craig Rich. I have a quick question. What's your definition of the near term, midterm, and long term in years?
Short term is 1 to 5 years, midterm is 5 to 10 years, and long term is 10 to 15.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. Okay, so this graphic basically sort of indicates what happens next. And we are wrapping up our current study. The draft final report will have all the details on the proposed recommendations as well as all the other study information that was developed. And then the next step needs to be implementation. How do we implement some of these recommended improvements? So there are, so you see the green box, and there are two sort of paths. One path would be to go to the top, to the gray area, and include the master plan and into the regional plans, the V-Trans 2045, the constraints long range plan. So those improvements would be incorporated into those long-term plans to be able to advance the larger type projects and bring in the mechanisms to identify funding for the implementation of those longer term or more capital intensive projects or major modifications to interchanges. If we're making any of those, then those need to be included in the regional plans. So once we include it there, then more detailed analysis will be required to advance those improvements. And once those more detailed studies are conducted, then we will be in the process of identifying funding. So you see that there is a blue arrow running from the gray area at the top into sort of the funding boxes. Now, there is also a possibility that for some of the less capital intensive projects or less projects that are lesser in scope than major reconstructions of ramps and other pieces of infrastructure within the study area, it's possible that those could be advanced either through a series of funding mechanisms such as the smart scale process, some specialized funding such as CMAQ funding, so some congestion mitigation funding, and we also could be working with MVTA funding. So this could be it would be possible to incorporate some of those as MVTA projects for implementation. Additionally, we will certainly continue to work with our partners, with MWA and TRIP2, to identify potential funding on their part for some of those improvements that are going to benefit MWA and TRIP2 in terms of traffic operations for their users. So it's not there are many options for identifying funding mechanisms, and we will be exploring those options. Now, for purposes of implementation, we will need to be at the point where we identify funding, and then we will move forward with implementation. And the implementation will be certainly led by VDOT, but it will be done in conjunction with our partners that we work on in the development of the study. And with that, I open for any other questions that you may have.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh.
Yes.
This is Tom Bashadny with Fairfax County.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to also clarify that on the process piece, in addition to VTrans 2045, these will need to be built into the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority's transaction plan, which they are just getting started on now. So the timing is good to have them move into that process.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, Tom. Do we have other questions for VDOT?
Ted, this is Mike Huber. I would have, and maybe you already addressed it and I missed it, but you know, what is the coordination with the metro? And you know, I mean, the whole concept of spending all the money on the metro is to relieve traffic congestion, and it seems like we're, you know, and we're looking at spending another $400 million on improving road conditions, you know, on top of the metro. So is the coordination with this, you know, looking at what that ridership how that might help alleviate some of the traffic issues we're talking about?
Yes, our modeling, the modeling that we undertook under our study, took into consideration the impact of metro. So we took our modeling was done for the years 2025 and 2045, and our models utilize the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments models, and those take into consideration the transit usage increased in this area. Even with switch to transit, there are still a number of traffic operations and safety issues that will be present in this area, and they need to be addressed. So yes, it would be much worse if we didn't have metro, but even with metro, we identified a need to address some of these safety and traffic operations issues.
Okay. And all this population increase is coming from where? Or people working?
There is regional growth in the area. So Route 28 and Route 267 are being affected by the regional growth, and there are also significant land development changes in the vicinity of this interchange in both the Fairfax County and Loudoun County plans. And yes, some of those users will be used in metro, but there are still a very significant number of people that will be using their automobiles.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thanks, Abraham and Susan, for that presentation. And we look forward to staying involved with it and seeing some things happen. Okay, our last presentation today, no, you're welcome, is from James David of Loudoun County, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the zoning ordinance rewrite, round 2 input. So you there, James?
I am here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good day to the Landowners Advisory Board. I appreciate you having us here to talk about where we're at with our zoning ordinance rewrite.
Hey,
So
James,
we can go to yes.
I'm sorry, this is Brett. Do you want me to stop sharing and then you share your version or your screen?
Yeah, I think that might be easiest. Thank you.
Okay, just one sec.
I'm doing it, Brett.
Okay.
Thank you.
And as soon as I get that share content button, I can go ahead and share. All right. Well, thanks very much. So hopefully everybody can see my initial slide here. All right, great. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about progress since the last time Loudoun County met with this board just under a year ago, and then update you on what we heard from our round 1 of public engagement. Talk a little bit about what we've been doing since that time, which is working with our consultants on a number of different deliverables that will inform the zoning ordinance rewrite. And then I wanted to end by giving a sneak preview of a new online zoning platform that we've been working on to try and make it a little bit more user-friendly. So in round 1, we reached out to over 30 different community groups, including this advisory board. All told, we got about 918 different comments on the zoning ordinance in Loudoun County. If you're interested to see that full list, I can certainly circulate that document. It's also attached to our board's TLUC item from mid-July of last year. But in general, we heard that our zoning ordinance is a little bit too difficult to understand and unpredictable, that users can't conduct their own research, that sometimes it's too reliant on staff interpretations, too specific in some areas, which results in too many mods and waivers, that it's out of date at times and slow to adapt to the trending market, and that it's not aligned with other regulatory documents. So if we just flip 180 and we turn that into what do we want out of this future ordinance, a document that's simple, clear, predictable, and applied consistently. That's more user-friendly, that has graphics and tables versus this heavy narrative document that we have now. That's got some flexibility and room for innovation. That's modern and adapts to the new trends and uses being introduced in our Loudoun market. And then also that aligns with other regulatory documents. So I mentioned that we met with you last year, and that was on February 24th. And looking back at the initial input that we got from this group, I summarized it here on this slide. So, we heard from the advisory board that there is strong interest in staying in the 1972 zoning ordinance, that people would like to keep the existing grandfather clause. There's not much interest in increased setbacks from roads, and that voluntary zoning conversions right now can result in a loss in property value. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to kind of pause on this slide and talk a little bit about how we want to address this going forward. So basically, what we're looking at is we want to honor all rights under the code and existing entitlements. And so the goal is to simplify the conversion process, maybe even eliminate what we call our ZRTD process, and you make it easier for people to come into the current regulations. So let me just restate that we are not trying to remove any rights under the statutory code or any existing entitlements. We're going to honor those rights and entitlements going forward. But we want to make the new ordinance better so that people do want to come in. And actually, one question for this group that we'd love to hear additional feedback on is, what would it take for folks to want to come in to the new ordinance? What types of, development standards or some sort of a regulatory platform would make it better for folks to come in under the new ordinance? So I can just throw that question out right now. We can pause to talk about it, Mr. Chair, or we can get through the rest of the presentation and take comments at the end, whatever you prefer.
James, I think just let's go through the presentation. Let's hold questions to the end because I think we're going to be close on time and I want to make sure we get through the presentation.
Okay, that sounds good. And if folks have ideas or they want to give additional comments, you can always check loudoun.gov/zoning ordinance rewrite. That's our project page. Or you can email zorewrite@loudoun.gov and we'd be happy to talk about it further. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the major deliverables we received from our consultant, which is a code audit. We hired WSP and they subcontracted with White and Smith and Kendall Keast to provide a third-party evaluation of our existing code. So what you'll find in there is some observations and recommendations on how to improve the code structure, how to improve districts, development standards, use regulations, and our administrative process of the code. So that document is available on that same web page, and I encourage you to take a look at some of the recommendations because you can think of that code audit almost like a playbook that staff is going to be looking at as we develop our draft text changes. We'll look at the code audit findings in conjunction with community feedback, advisory body input, staff research, and board direction as we move towards drafting text changes to our code. Really, those recommendations help us with a path to making it more usable, a little bit more modern, and aligning with our new general plan. When we talk about code structure, making it more user-friendly, things like putting the information people are looking for up front, adding more graphics, making the right things easy. This concept is if a project is aligning with plan policy goals, let's make it easier on people, not harder to get through the process. Maybe that means more administrative or by right approvals versus having to go to the board. Reflecting best practices, I've got them shown on the screen here. I won't dive into them in too much detail, but just know that there's lots of different zoning ordinance approaches out there today. Loudoun pretty much uses conventional zoning, which breaks the county into different districts with different use, setbacks, height, density standards. We use overlays, but mainly for protection. And then we use planned unit developments in Loudoun, where it's more of a negotiation process. But there's a lot of other approaches that we're thinking about and are detailed in that code audit document if you're interested. Also, we want to integrate with other documents. We know sometimes that our general plan definitions don't align with our zoning definitions, and we want to fix that. When we look at the amount of districts in Loudoun, there are about 61 zoning districts, and we think we could simplify and consolidate that and get down to 30 districts. And so we're looking at ways that we can maybe rename some of the districts to align better with the general plan and simplify them going forward. Development standards, the code audit recommendations were to look at historic resource preservation and implement environmental policies, broaden affordable housing incentives, consider maybe illustrating desired product types in the code to give people more of an idea of what the county's looking for, and then to focus on site design between districts. By that, I mean kind of the transitional techniques as you go from a more intense to a less intense district. For use regulations, the consultant is recommending that we go to a consolidated land use matrix, which I think is going to be a big help moving forward, where what you end up doing is instead of having every set of uses listed in different districts, you have all the land uses down the y-axis, you have all the zones across the x-axis, and then you just simply indicate where is this use allowed, where does it require some sort of special exception or use permit. So what you see on the screen here is just a sample from another jurisdiction. But the idea here is to make it easier for folks to understand where things are allowed and where they might need additional review, but also to audit that list of uses against some of the industry standards like NAICS codes to make sure that we're accommodating every potential business that might want to come and do business in Loudoun County. Finally, there were some recommendations about streamlining process. Right now, it takes about anywhere from 12 to 24 months to get through our legislative process. We understand that we want to try and make that better. And one thing we might look at is our checklist up front, getting some more of that critical info up front so that we can speed up some of those referrals in the middle of the review process. So that really is the code audit. And then finally, I just wanted to switch to our online zoning platform, which is a pretty neat software called Encode Plus that we've built out based on the existing ordinances to date, and we'll be using to publish our draft text changes going forward for public comment. So let me just switch over to the internet here and show you what I'm talking about. So if you're familiar with our zoning ordinance right now, it's about 1,100 pages in a giant PDF. This is more of a user-friendly web interface for folks to find the information that they need in the zoning ordinance. So as I mentioned, everything that's built out here is existing. There's no changes yet, but we do intend to propose changes via this platform and allow folks to comment later this summer. So what you see here is our landing page with a quick definition of what is in the zoning ordinance, some radio buttons that can take you to some useful links. Browsing over in the mega menus, you can get to the revised 93 ordinance. You can see now it's all tabulated in the middle here. It's got bookmarks to the left. Let's just click on PDRP. You can see we're using colors to break up the different section of the ordinance. One neat thing is you can hover over wording that's in the text now, and you can see right there, well, how does the county define public water? How does the county define plaza? And then there's also hyperlinks to the different sections that are referenced. So just trying to make it easier for users to understand and get to the information that they need. If you'd rather not browse and you just want to hit search, there's a pretty robust search function. You can enter in a term like office park, hit search. It'll pull up everywhere in the zoning ordinance that the words office park are currently described. So another neat tool just to get you where you need to be. If you're more of a graphic-based person, we also have an interactive map. So this is what it would look like. You could put a search term in the search engine here. It'll navigate right to that section of the county in this interactive map. There's a bunch of layers you can turn on and off to see what type of zoning and different things apply. And then if you click on the parcel itself, it automatically will pull up the parcel number, the acreage, and other information as it relates to the parcel, similar to if you're familiar with our WebLogis system. So just another way to get to zoning information if you'd rather use a map versus search through the code. The archive feature, this will be pretty important for those folks that might be proffered to a certain date or a certain time of the ordinance or certain version of the ordinance, you can search by date, select what you're looking for here. There'll be a place where we consolidate all of our tables. Right now, we don't have too many tables in our ordinance, but we're looking to add more tables to make the information easier. You can come here to find your parking calcs, your buffer calcs, your signage regs. And then there's a document library to link you to, other potential regulatory documents that you're looking for, useful links that you might be looking for the application, or maybe you want to go check out the comprehensive plan while you're on the zoning webpage. And then finally, for those people that don't always think in government speak, this is just another way to get to the information. You click on how do I review standards for lots, buildings, etc. It'll take you to that right portion of the code. So we're very excited about rolling this out. If there's people from this board that want to take a test drive and offer some feedback on, hey, this is broken or this is missing information, I'd love to hear from you. But we're hoping that we can roll out the text changes in this platform this summer. So that brings me to my last slide, Mr. Chair, which is kind of the upcoming project milestones. There's a new committee called the Zoning Ordinance Committee that is meeting. This was formerly the ZOAG, the Zoning Ordinance Action Group. They're meeting monthly, so that's a good place to tune in if you're focused on this project. Round 2 input, we're in it right now. We're probably going to end that end of March, early April. We plan to bring our resolution of intent to amend to the board this spring, and then hopefully be releasing draft text changes this summer. So the next round of input will be a 90-day referral process where this board and others could get in, look at the text changes, reply, add comments, using that Encode Plus platform, or written submissions are fine too. We'll take that feedback from the community, we'll revise and get to our Planning Commission draft. We'll be in front of the Planning Commission in the fall. We'll take their feedback, revise, integrate, and then we'll take the Planning Commission draft to the board and hopefully be in front of the board early to mid 2022. Final note is I do give a quarterly update to the board's Transportation Land Use Committee, and the next one is coming up in April and May. So with that, tried to go quickly to be mindful of time, Mr. Chair, and I'm open to have any questions or comments.
All right. Thanks, James. Any questions?
Hi, this is Mary Beth Avadesian. I'm with the BSL company, and I'm going to apologize in advance for having a dog barking downstairs at workman in my house. I love what you're doing to the automating the zoning ordinance. Are you planning to do the same thing with the 72 ordinance so that it can also be easily navigated?
Mary Beth, actually the 72 ordinance is built out already in that platform. So right now we have the 72, the 93, and the revised 93 ready to go.
Okay, and then my other question is, for those property owners who do not want to change their, particularly those in the special tax district who have a legal right to stay in whatever zoning ordinance was on their property at the time the tax district came into being, what happens with the zoning ordinance on their properties if they're opting to stay in the 72 ordinance?
So we'll honor those rights under the state code and the existing entitlements going forward.
So I'm not sure then what you're asking or what you're suggesting the changes are that are going before the board. I'm not clear on what you're proposing to them then.
So the changes will be to the zoning ordinance as it applies to the entire county. And so what we're looking to do primarily is, align with that new general plan that was adopted back in 2019. So, we're looking at ways to, maybe in the urban policy areas that were introduced, which is a new concept for Loudoun, to look at our parking standards, look at our development standards, try that to make that align with the urban policy area goals as it's laid out in the plan. Another example could be updating our sign regulations. We know our sign regulations are woefully out of date. Some of them are content-based, which we don't want to have, and so we need to update those sign regulations. We've heard significant concerns about parking especially in multifamily projects, that there's not enough parking. So we're drilling down and going to recommend some changes to the parking standards. We might recommend some changes to some of the districts. So, the new ordinance, as it applies to the Route 28 area, hopefully will make it better so that when folks are looking to do something on their properties, they'll want to come into that new ordinance because it's better than previous versions. But if folks want to elect to stay under the 72, they will be protected, and we will honor those rights and existing entitlements.
Okay, other questions?
No, Ted, this is Jim Policaro. Not really a question, but I do agree with Mary Beth that we are interested in staying in the 72 ordinance if in fact we choose to do so. So that's very important to us as well.
Very good. I appreciate that feedback. And I neglected to mention that our Deputy County Attorney, Courtney Sidner, is on the call as well. And she's listening in, and she's certainly helping us with, any changes proposed as it applies to this area of the county.
Okay, thank you.
So the clarifications that you're doing to the zoning ordinance are just the most current version, the 93 revised? That's what you're providing, enhancements to, trying to make it more user friendly and or developer friendly, so that it with its new applications would perhaps be more attractive and entice a developer to opt into that without having to go through a ZRTD, I gather from what you said. But
yeah,
it still doesn't change the structure or the nature of the tax district or the Virginia code that requires that the ordinance sort of remain static as long as the bonds are outstanding. So you're not proposing any of those kinds of changes.
That's exactly right. You actually said it better than I could. One clarification is it is a rewrite. So we aren't going to have the revised 93 anymore. We will have a new ordinance that will replace that one.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thanks a lot, James. That was real helpful, and sounds like you got a lot going on these days, so that's good to hear.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me today. And if anybody has any further questions, please reach out to that email address or my email address as well.
Okay, well, listen, everybody, I think we're 1 minute before time. I can't believe we're actually going to end pretty close to time. And one thing I want to make sure I do is thank both Fairfax and Loudoun County for all their pre-work on getting this virtual meeting up and running. It was quite an effort, and they did a great job. So I really appreciate all the work that they did to make this meeting happen. And I do think we probably, hopefully we can meet in person. We do have the right to do a fall meeting. I think this would probably be a good year to have that done. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
One second. This is Bill Keach. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Ted. Thank you for your leadership, obviously. But really, this is a significant point here for this task district, the fact that we've completed all this through all these years. And it really is a testament to, forming one of the first tax districts in Virginia, but also the coordination between the two jurisdictions and the Shirley and VDOT team. It has truly been a significant partnership and one that has worked very well. So hats off to them for a great job. And also thank you to all the property owners through the years who have sacrificed and made this happen as well. It's quite significant. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Very well said.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Mary Beth navigation.
All right, Mary Beth seconded. All right. We don't have to do a roll call for this, do we? Yeah, I think we'll just adjourn. I'll make the executive decision on that one. So appreciate it, everybody. Good meeting. Look forward to talking to you later.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.